Firstly, to start off this video, I really want to say thank you to everyone who has supported the channel this far. I've been taking in your comments on how the pacing on the videos could probably be a bit faster and how subtitles would really help. Unfortunately, this week I really haven't had the time to fix the issue of subtitles yet, and also ideally going forward I would like to improve on the audio quality of the videos a bit as well. Hopefully by the next video that comes out this would be better, but for now, sorry, please put up with me for that. Also, in preparation for today's video, I actually wanted to find statistics and numbers on deaths of ongoing wars, but I realized that that number is actually almost impossible to find, which is honestly quite concerning. But for now, there's really not much we can do about that. What we can do is really just to kind of stay in touch with the news. I think really to keep in mind the real cost to human lives that is going on kind of beyond beneath the headlines once a war or conflict just kind of fades out of the news cycle. So the format of this video will be quite different to the previous ones, as you can see by this change in background. For those of you familiar with broadcast television, this would be a bit similar to Weekend Update by SNL or Meanwhile by Stephen Colbert, where we're looking into kind of the stories that are not really necessarily most eye-catching headlines, but I believe are nonetheless very worth paying attention to. It'll probably be slightly less funny, but also hopefully a little bit more informative as well. We'll kind of begin with the more heavy news, but kind of progress to end on a slightly more light-hearted tone. So do let me know in the comments if you find the format of this video to be interesting and useful, and let's get to it. So firstly, in the news of war, Pakistan has hit Afghanistan with a fresh wave of airstrikes that's resulted in the deaths of a lot of people. Pakistan has denied claims that they're attacking civilian facilities, but most sources on the ground believe that they did in fact hit a drug rehab center in Kabul, killing 408 people, most of which would have been civilians. Now, this isn't a new war, it's an escalation of ongoing conflict that began in October of 2025. Information on this war is really lacking and really sketchy. Nobody really knows how it started or how many deaths it actually resulted in, but Pakistan has accused the Taliban Afghanistan government of sheltering militants within their borders who have attacked Pakistan. Now, due to the nature of this war, I think it is highly unlikely that a proper peace treaty would be reached. A temporary ceasefire has been reached since that attack, and China does claim to be helping negotiate a peace treaty between the two countries, but because Pakistan is claiming to be fighting non-governmental combatants, I think it's very unlikely that this will last, the peace treaty will last. Unfortunately, it'll be one of those cases where civilians will really be bearing the brunt of the casualties and the cost of war, and we can only wait and see to see how it will continue to develop. Now, elsewhere in a different continent, war has broke out between Colombia and Ecuador when the Colombian president Petro has accused the Ecuadorian government of launching bomb strikes near the border that's resulted in 27 charred bodies being found. Now, these claims have not been verified, but I would like to add that the Ecuadorian president's track record has been controversial at best. He has long been accused of deploying authoritarian means within his own country, and in 2024 he even raided the Mexican embassy to arrest a political rival that may or may not look like Jeffrey Epstein. And since then, Mexico and a lot of other Latin American countries have severed ties with Ecuador, but to the best of my knowledge, no proper resolution has been found to this conflict, and the former vice president and the Ecuadorian president's political rival has since been rotting in a prison. Now, surprise surprise, the Ecuadorian president Noboa is a strong and close ally of Donald Trump. There's a photo of him and Kristi Noem back in 11th of March, where it was the first opening of an FBI office in Ecuador. Now, this photo has obviously aged very poorly since Kristi Noem is no longer within her position, but I think in general this speaks to a very worrying trend in international relations. The big fireworks show in the Middle East is really providing shelter and justification for a lot of these smaller conflicts going on that really still results in a lot of death and casualties. Latin America has long been kind of a center and hotspot for a lot of rivaling and contradicting political ideologies, but international relations simply cannot continue when the trend and the order is just whoever has the bigger gun wins. Remember back in the days of kind of the earlier 2000s when this type of war would have been the headlines and would have drawn a lot of controversy and ridicule from the international community, but now we simply just do not have the time or the bandwidth to entertain this or even try to deal with this problem. Elsewhere in the UK, there's been an outbreak of meningitis, but hey, at least it's not war, I guess. Officials have since said that it has become mostly containable, but unfortunately it still resulted in the deaths of 2 people and many more being infected. Now, this is still an ongoing story, so it is unclear of how and where exactly the outbreak began, but most of it has been found in Canterbury, in Kent, which is like in the southeast of the UK. Now, meningitis is a bacterial infection that can be lethal within 24 hours of contraction, which is why it's quite scary and most cases highly deadly. Now, meningitis also spread via bodily fluids, so which is why most of these cases have been traced back to universities and high schools, and also traced back to nightclubs. Vaccines were actually offered in the UK for babies since 2015, but intake of the vaccines has been in steady decline, which is why also teenagers born before then are unlikely to have been vaccinated for the specific strand of meningitis, which explains probably why this affected the specific demographic in this case as well. It's also because cases of meningitis in general has been declined, so the story doesn't seem to be cause for massive concern, but I think it's something to just keep an eye out for, especially if you live in the UK. In the world of sports, and slightly more lighthearted news, the African Cup of Nations final was played on the 18th of January between Senegal and host nations Morocco. Now, Senegal actually won in extra time 1-0, but it was a match filled with controversy. And in the most recent dramatic chapter, the Confederation of African Football came out last week to overturn the results and award the trophy to Morocco. Now, from the get-go, this competition in general, the relationship between Morocco and CAF and other African countries has been tenuous at best. Morocco, as one of the richer African countries, has long provided resources and support to CAF, the Confederation of African Football, to host competitions and tournaments. And in return, there have often been accusations of corruption and biases of favoritism from CAF to Morocco. Now, during the match, it was actually raining very hard, and hence the Senegalese goalkeeper Edouard Mendy had a towel next to the goal where he used to wipe clean his gloves to make sure it was less slippery. And during the match, the ball boys from Morocco actually fought the backup keeper from Senegal to try to steal the towel from them. And this was all going on during the match, and the referee did nothing about it. Ball boys were actually attacking players from Senegal. And there are obviously other decisions during the match that people accused of being corrupt and biased and favoring Morocco. In the dying minutes of the match, there was actually a goal that Senegal scored and was ruled out by the referee. And almost immediately on the other end, a penalty was awarded to Morocco against Senegal. And at that point, fans and players broke out and fighting, and the Senegalese players actually all walked off the pitch, refusing to play the game at the encouragement of the Senegalese coach. Now, Senegal's star player Sadio Mane managed to get the team back onto the pitch to finish the game and play it and see it out. At which point, the penalty that was awarded was taken by Real Madrid player Brahim Diaz, who actually missed the penalty. Hence, the game went into extra time on 0-0, and Senegal managed to score in extra time, which resulted in them winning the entire tournament. But since then, the Moroccan FA has appealed to CAF and resulted in the results of the tournament being overruled. And this is obviously a very dark chapter for African football, because African football has always been taken as being very corrupt and unserious, and now this really adds on to the controversies around it. This is still an ongoing story because the Senegalese FA has now appealed the decision to the International Court of Arbitration of Sport, and we're still waiting to see what happens. But in general, I think it's problematic that a boardroom of executives decided 2 months after the actual competition has been played to overturn the results that the referee even then allowed. Actually, in a a comedic turn of events and recent developments of this news, the head coach of the Senegalese football team took the trophy to a Senegalese military base to prevent it from being taken by CAF. Now, I can only say I hope that this doesn't result in a war being broke out, but because as you've seen from earlier in this video, recently wars have really broken out for much less tangible reasons. In entertainment news, famed American playwright Jeremy O. Harris called OpenAI CEO Sam Altman a Nazi at the Vanity Fair's Oscars after party. Now, firstly, I actually have no idea why Sam Altman was invited to the Oscars after party to begin with. He doesn't have anything to do with the entertainment industry or Hollywood, but sure, whatever, right? But just everything about this story I love, from this picture, as you can probably tell, of O'Harris on the red carpet to begin with. And then I would like to add that the story was first reported by Page 6, which is not exactly the most credible news source, because it was actually owned by New York Post, but other sources have picked up on the story since then, so I feel like it was reliable enough to report on. And in researching the story, I realized that the New York Post was actually originally owned by Alexander Hamilton. It was bought by Rupert Murdoch in the 1950s, and New York Post now is generally regarded as a far-right tabloid and not trustworthy source of news whatsoever. And honestly, what a fall from grace this has been. There's almost the extent that I believe At the end of the Hamilton musical, she just added a scene of Murdoch coming out and beating Hamilton's corpse to signify how he has really kind of butchered his legacy. And kind of in response to this news, O'Harris has responded that he apologizes because during the party he was drunk and he called Sam Altman Goebbels, which I believe probably needs not much introduction. He was the propagandist of the Nazi party. And O'Harris responded in saying that he should have called him Friedrich Flick instead, which is honestly brilliant because Flick was a Nazi industrialist who helped the Nazi party through his steel operations and munitions operations, which granted is a much fairer comparison. But yeah, there isn't really much of a takeaway from the story. I just felt like it was a fun and interesting tidbit to add on. And that really wraps up the news this week. Leave a comment if you found this helpful or informative. I really hope you guys will enjoy this new different format. And also do let me know if you believe that there were other stories that are worth covering that I probably did not really in particular talk about. Obviously there's a lot that goes on, but I'm trying to pick out some of the highlights that I believe are also not really the most eye-catching headlines. And hopefully this helps us all stay a bit more informed with everything that's going on in the world right now. If you have made it this far, firstly, thank you so much for watching the video. It also probably means that you're at least okay with the content you're seeing here. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot. And for the meantime, please check out this video for more of the similar good stuff.